worst possible time to interview you about Rochdale because you just got relegated.
I'm used to misery watching Rochdale, so nothing new, lads, nothing new.
Sorry about that.
Oh, listen, I'm sure that's what we're going to get into a bit more detail in terms of that. So obviously the title of this episode is Oggy's Dale. So we're basically just going to talk to Andy about his love of Rochdale, how it started, just all kind of your moments and just stuff in terms of that. So tell us, how did you kind of start getting into football and what kind of happened with that?
Yeah, I think it was, I don't know, like accident really, because in our family, generally like Jeff's a Man City fan, but he was a Liverpool fan before he became a City fan. I think he was at the stage when Liverpool was winning everything in like the late 80s.
Jeff's not allowed to talk.
We will no longer show Jeff on this podcast.
Yeah, that's it.
Anymore.
He's not allowed in.
But he turned into a Man City fan when we found out that, like from my mother's side of the family, there was a relative who played for Manchester City in the late 70s, early 80s called Kenny Clements. Right, so once Jeff found that out, right, I'm a Man City fan now because of like family reasons. But I didn't
recognise the name. I know what he looked. There you go.
Yeah, that's him. Yeah. Well, but like from the mother's side of the family, we've all got like, I had like proper curly hair when I was younger, and yeah, my mum had curly hair. Jeff, not so much really now. But yeah, now the curly hair comes from that side of the family.
Yeah. So he was a kind of man. So he was a Liverpool fan, then turned into a Manchester City fan.
Yeah.
What about you? What kind of led you, or what was your football path?
I think it was mainly through my dad being a Rochdale fan since, good God, about late 1950s. He started. I know he did. My dad did mention like going to the League Cup final, which I think it was the first League Cup final, or like the unofficial one where they got beat by Norwich in a two-legged final.
Wasn't it 4-0?
Yeah, something like that.
Like a Rochdale kind of scoreline,
yeah. And he'd been going for like years, so I think it was the off chance of going to a game with my dad. To watch him, and it was in August 1989, Rochdale versus Scunthorpe, and we got beat 1-0. So that has a mean to go along, but no, it was one of them. As soon as I went, I was hooked. But my dad would only take us when he only had like some spare money. So whenever he'd go off with his mates and I weren't going to the match, I'd cry. Because I couldn't go. I know it's just sad thing looking back on it now, but
they weren't a particularly good team either, were they? At the time, they were like 4th division.
Yeah, 4th division rubbish. I think the biggest part of that time was maybe getting to, I think it was the 5th round of the FA Cup or 5th of the 6th round against Crystal Palace, where we got beat. I think we still got like a program, not the Crystal Palace one, but when we played Whitley Bay in that cup run that season, I still got like the program upstairs. But yeah, generally football, when I started watching them, terrible to watch.
It seems, and obviously it's good. It's weird that you're kind of, obviously you've picked that club, and obviously your brothers went and picked kind of two of the more kind of highly successful clubs. Did you ever have a moment of kind of an affinity for another club that was successful, or?
Yeah, so I would say at primary school, I always had. I think it was around the time of Blackburn Rovers in 92.
Yeah, that's when that's a Jack Walker era, isn't it? Around there.
Yeah, so I had a bit of affinity with them because they're like getting popular and that, and they would have been the team at the time, but I think generally it's always been Rochdale. There's been little moments where I'm a Blackburn Rovers fan now because they're winning everything, but nah, so it's always been Rochdale. I've been to like watch a couple of Man City games here and there, but it's just not the same feeling.
And when you, obviously, because I say you were saying Blackburn Rovers, that was the Jack Walker, the SAS, Sutton and Shearer kind of era and stuff like that. When you first went to kind of Rochdale Stadium, what was the kind of experience? What do you kind of remember from that?
Right. So the experience. So you could say like I think what's the away stand now is the Wilberts Lane end. And well, as I talk and as we're recording, Rochdale have gone 1-0 up against MK Don. So. But the first stand I go in was what was the Wilberts Lane end. That was a home stand, and then like at half time, back in them days of lower league football, you could go round to the Sandy Lane end, which is another home end. It's madness. I think even before that, like. Away, like home fans could go through like the away end and go to the other end of the ground to watch the game in the second half. It is, Sandy Lane. But generally, the Wilberts Lane end, they had a big scoreboard.
Anybody else got Penny Lane playing in their head, but with Sandy Lane instead of Penny Lane? Is that just me?
You realize we're on a podcast with the two singing wrestling fans.
Yeah.
A bit late, we're going to be singing.
But say the Wilberts Lane end had a big giant scoreboard, so you could see all scores coming through, which was a godsend back in them days. And they eventually moved the scoreboard to the Sandy Lane end, but I remember one of the players breaking it when like a stray shot hit the scoreboard and it knackered it up for. Well, I think it's still not working now.
That's never surprising.
But yeah, I would. I first started in the Wilberts Lane and then went to the Sandy Lane end, which is the stand behind the goal. That's generally where all the hardcore fans go. But we moved away from there and then went into the.
Is that all standing at that end? Is that just like a standing area? Yeah,
that's all standing. If they ever turn that into seats, there'd be riots. There would be riots. And then I moved to the seating area at the other end of the goal until like the last 2 years, where I've been watching it from the Sandy Lane end just because it's 50 quid cheaper for a season ticket.
That's not bad. And if you had a season ticket for how long would you say you've been a season ticket holder at Rochdale?
Probably only since he started doing it at like 200 quid for the season. So maybe the last 3 seasons I've been a season ticket holder, but before that, I'd be always paying me 20 quid on the door and what have you. So they've probably been getting more money out of me than
than wrestling at the moment and other things.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to quickly ask, just obviously because we're in that moment of pandemic, and obviously, have you still been paying for your season ticket through the pandemic? And what have kind of Rochdale done for you in terms of that? Have they done anything?
Yeah, so we've got like an electronic season card, which is still in my drawer unused. But for every time there's been a home game, we've been getting a code to go onto like iFollow to watch the matches, and also like the away matches we have to pay for, and like the cup games, which is like a tenner. But it's not too bad. The stream in general's been excellent on iFollow, and the commentary's half decent. You get used to them after a while, but. Hey, 2-0 up now. My God.
So we interviewed JP, and he
and
was
Arsenal
Newcastle were winning, and Arsenal were 2-0 won. You're interviewing now, and Rochdale are winning, so we might want to have to bring you on for another one at some point when it's like a big game. But yeah, so they're doing. So obviously, you go on iFollow, you listen to the commentary there, you watch the match from there.
Yeah.
And obviously, in terms of, because obviously we talked about how you kind of got into Rochdale and how you started supporting them. In terms of, I think you've already mentioned maybe one of the highest highs of being at the club. Was it the cup run, or what has kind of been like one of the highest highs of being a Rochdale supporter?
I think I would say the 2 promotions, but the actual penalty to beat Darlington in the playoff semi-finals to get to Wembley in 2008 by Ben Muirhead.
Okay.
Yeah, the goal. Well, the penalty when that went in to win the shootout is just like pandemonium because as a Rochdale fan, you don't feel success. So that was like a big successful moment, winning that game and just going in the pubs after everyone like singing and yeah.
Clearly an enjoyable. And did you go to Wembley yourself? Did you go?
Yeah, me, my dad, and Jeff went to Wembley. Disappointment. We got beat 3-2 by Stockport. Funnily enough, I would say that match for Stockport was the beginning of their downfall because they ended up going up to the Championship, but that's when they got into like money troubles and soon slid down to the National League.
Yeah, and the experience at please, oh
Sorry,
God,
mate.
we're digging it in there. And the experience at Wembley must have been a kind of a fun one to kind of go there and be finally supporting like your team are there in terms of that.
I'd say with Wembley as a place, it's disappointing on the outside. It's just like it's all like an industrial estate round there. Like when you're going in on the coach.
Yeah.
It's not really inviting. I mean, inside it's like, you're paying a tenner for your fish and chips and extortion.
How many of the bars did you get into? Because there's about 12 bars in Wembley.
I think we managed to, easily get served. Well, there were about 25,000 that day. I think it was one of the lowest attended playoff finals. But the problem was with the Rochdale fans because the ticket site, I think, was through Ticketmaster. So people was just like picking and choosing the seats in like different sections of the crowd. They were all in one, whereas Stockport were all in one area. So I think a big bulk of the Rochdale fans were right up in the upper tier because it was cheap.
Up in the cheap seats, yeah.
Up in the cheap seats, yeah. Whereas we were like right next to like the entrance area where they go up for the cup and everything. So we made a quick exit as soon as we got beat. We're not seeing Stockport get the trophy. We're off. Get on the coach.
Away you go, back up the road. More pints in you in terms of that. So would that kind of been one of obviously the next, but obviously we talked about the highest to highs is kind of that playoff and that playoff semi-final and the penalty. Would the cup final have been a lowest of lows, or what? Or is there a moment that would beat that? I mean, obviously, I say this season you've been relegated, but I don't know if that's something that's hit you too much, or.
I'd say the lowest of lows. Well, for me personally, was the playoff semi-final. I think it was the season after we lost to Stockport, going down to Gillingham, which is a long way. It's a good 5.5 hour journey down there. So I went down for the second leg.
Anything that's like the wrong side of London's a real pain to get to.
Yeah. So I think we had to take 2 like coach stops. And along the way, I know Bury were playing in the afternoon against Shrewsbury in the other playoff semi-final, and they got beat on penalties, which, like, gets you hyped, like, Bury are out, good stuff. So let's do our job, and we got beat 1-0. And I remember just walking out of the ground, nearly like crying because it's just like thinking we're never getting out of this league. It's just not going to happen. And luckily, season after we did eventually go up, beating Northampton with the game we got promoted in. But we were, I think, 14 points clear at the top of the league. This was at the time when Notts County, had like Sven and
Sven and I remember
Mumtold Finance.
Didn't they have Sol Campbell in their team at one point or something?
Yeah,
like that?
Sol Campbell. Yeah. They also had
consolation they're not in the league anymore. So
they also had that murderer around then, Lee Hughes.
Oh yeah, I remember.
I used to run an off license, and I once sold Lee Hughes a case of champagne, and that was about a month before his incident.
Ooh,
so, yeah.
Just be aware, we're not being libelous or anything. We're just saying that
he had some issues there.
Yeah. So that would have been a moment for you, and then obviously that just thinking you're never going to get out of that league, then you finally do.
Yeah.
And I mean, if we move on, kind of in terms of the current team, in terms of that, and obviously kind of supporting up until then, how have you kind of? What's your thoughts been on Rochdale over the last couple of seasons in terms of it? How has it been for you? What process are you in at the moment?
I think this season there's been a lot more talk of boardroom trouble at the moment. Obviously, with like COVID happening, that like finances have been draining away. Because generally with Rochdale, they'd like sell players. I think like the last one they saw with Luke Matheson to Wolves.
Yeah, for $1 million, wasn't it?
Yeah, got a bit of money from that, but a lot of the, like I say, a lot of the finances have dried up, and with boardroom troubles, it's not like Rochdale to have like boardroom trouble, but when you're hearing stuff about it, and generally on the forums, it's just like every week, like something's happened, and I know they're looking to get investors in. The latest ones to be linked to the Speakmans, who were known celebrities who've been seen on like This Morning. They're a bit like Clinton Baptiste, to be honest. But they're looking to put money in, and there's been talk of the former chairman Chris Dunphy making a return, like it's coming in like a white knight to save us from the evil overlords who are in charge at the moment. But I think it all come to a head maybe a couple of months ago when they had like an online fans forum on YouTube, and I think he's the chief executive, David Bottomley, and he was doing the old crocodile tears routine when there were obviously like the questions were about people having a go at the manager in charge, Barry Murphy, and David Bottomley just kept going, Brian's doing his best job ever. It was so embarrassing. Like the first time, he did it again, like later on in the fans forum. And then there were also a moment during it when there was a question about when does Barry Murphy's contract end? And so one of the board members asked Brian, when did your contract end? 2022. Oh, I thought it was 2021, but it had not been disclosed to the supporters that the board had given an extra year's contract. And like the supporters, like, when did this happen? So like the transparency and communication between the boardroom and the supporters, it's severely lacking at the moment.
What do you actually rate Barry Murphy in any way? Because I always say you don't trust somebody with two first names, but having like three first names and two of them are hyphenated is just a disaster, isn't it?
I do rate him as a manager. We do play like a good standard of football. It's carrying on like what it were under Keith Hill, like that philosophy. There has been moments where, especially I think his wife got involved in a Twitter spat with some supporters who was like calling for his head. She's like a TV personality, yeah. And like when the missus were getting involved with one of the lads who does a lot of reporting for Rochdale, like freelance reporting, that was getting plastered over Twitter. Like, oh god, he's like one thing to another with this club. But no, I do rate him as a manager. But it'll be interesting to see in League Two, like, how well he does, because I think Rochdale supports a lot of the supporters are saying probably another 6 months, and then if he's not doing well, get shut.
And we mentioned obviously before the transfer, you'd had the money come out, you had the money come in for Matheson. Had you seen Matheson play live, and did you see something there, or what was your first thoughts when you saw him play?
Well, his first appearance was in the Football League Trophy as a substitute after 10 minutes. I think he was like 15 or 16-year-old at the time. And he got man of the match on his first appearance, and you could tell it was like another level. And I think maybe a couple of months after he'd become a regular in the side at quite a young age, and he did get the equaliser at Old Trafford in the League Cup. Yeah. And that sort of put him on another level and onto Wolves' radar, where they did sign him. Yeah. But they did send him on loan to Ipswich Town, but that's been quite a poor loan. I think he's been injured as well. But no, he's definitely a good prospect that's come through. And that's what Rochdale tend to do. A lot of the youth players, there has been quite a production line of good young players come through for a sell-on fee.
I was going to say, has there been any others other than him that you've looked at, or when you see him play for Rochdale and think that boy is going to go on to better things, most definitely?
Craig Dawson was the one. He actually made his debut. We were there that evening at Radcliffe Borough. In a pre-season friendly, because the centre-back pairing at the time was Nathan Stanton and Rory McArdle. Okay. But McArdle got injured, I think, in the warm-up, so they ended up putting Craig Dawson in the team to make his debut, and he stayed there all season. I think McArdle ended up just like bench warming, but you could see something in Dawson, like goal scoring,
baby face young Craig Dawson there.
Yeah, goal scoring centre half, and I think there was like one season he got double figures, but you can still see now at West Ham. Yeah. That he's still popping in headers, and he's always good for the fantasy football teams at cheap price.
Yeah. Is he in your team, is he?
Yeah, he's in my team.
Do you try and stick to old Rochdale players where you can?
Yeah, it's always the case, like Craig Dawson. Well, there's been plenty who've been in like the Premier League, like Dawson, Glenn Murray, Adam Lafondra, Ricky Lambert, Grant Holt. They've all been there.
Current wrestler Grant Holt, my goodness.
Current wrestler Grant Holt, yeah.
Oh dear.
I mean, if we move on, so obviously Rochdale for you has always been that club. You've said you did go to the odd occasional, you've been to occasional Man City games and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Was there any other experiences of football that are not Rochdale that you've probably thought this is one of the best experiences I've been on? I think I might know where you go with this, because I think JP maybe mentioned it, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, so there were obviously the Tranmere game, whereas in the Tranmere end, as Rochdale beat them 3-2. Well, that's actually the second time I've been sat in an opposite team's end while Rochdale have been playing. The other time was Stockport away, and because I must have overspent in the social club next door, so I thought, oh no, I've only got enough money to go and sit in the home end. So I went and sat in the home end, and Rochdale got beat 2-0. But I did the thing like as soon as Stockport scored, go on County, fitted in. But yeah, there's been them 2 times. We've been to like because we had mates who like supported Everton. We went to Bury and Everton at Gig Lane. And Everton fans, the animals, absolute animals they were, giving abuse to. I know Arn's an Everton fan, but
they're terrible. I've been to Goodison. I know what you're talking about.
This pub near the ground, I think it's the Pack Horse, and outside, just Everton fans giving abuse to people going past, and yeah. Yeah, kicking footballs into the traffic, everything. It's just mental. They were.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, because those all sound like, honestly, kicking footballs into the traffic just sounds like an experience and a half to watch. Do you have much national team focus? Do you look at England and support them as much, or were you ever like that before, or?
I think with England, I've never seen them live. I've seen like one of the youth levels live when like Ross Barkley were in the under-17s. It was like a baking hot. It were actually at Scotland. Can't remember who they were playing, but I remember about like 30 degrees outside. And I've been to watch horse racing the day before, and I got sunstroke. So every time the beating sun was coming down during this England under-17s game, How? With England team, I think over the last couple of years, like my interest in them has gone away. It's just like when they're on telly, it's like, oh, I'm not bothered. But we're really into watching them, especially like the World Cups and Euros. But yeah,
I only did major tournaments. Like I was talking to Mike this morning about going to see England, and he was saying about how friendlies are really cheap to get into. I'm like, that's because no one wants to watch them.
Yeah.
That's why they created the Nations League, which just seems like a ridiculous concept still. But
it's like when the international weekends come around, and it's just like, oh, I'm not bothered. It ruins football. I want to watch Premier League every weekend or Championship. I don't want to watch Slovakia versus San Marino and. Even from a betting standpoint, it's miserable because every match is like 6-1 on favourites and 100-1 on. It's pointless.
And that was actually one thing I was going to ask as well. You're obviously you do a lot of gambling and a lot of betting, obviously with football. Has Rochdale always been one that you've tried to avoid on the coupon, or is it something you've kind of put on if you think you've definitely got a shot, or?
I tend to avoid backing Rochdale, or backing against. I'm never back against Rochdale. I always remember having a go at former Progress owner John Briley for backing against England, and had a go at him on Twitter. I think I ended up being blocked.
Well, there's a shock.
But yeah, no, I tend to avoid backing him.
Yeah.
Do you as a Rochdale supporter, do you get to see a lot of like League One grounds? Do you get to go? Excuse me. Do you get to see a lot of away games, or are you more of a like you go to the home games and you're not too worried about the away ones?
Well, generally, like I've got like go all the home games, but like away games, I used to go tons back before I got into watching all the wrestling shows.
Yeah. You always seem to be somewhere. Like I'll see you tweeting on like a Friday or a Saturday, and it's like you're always on your way somewhere to do something.
Yeah, away grounds. Generally, all the local ones I did go like Bury and Accrington because they're easy to get to, and Oldham. But I've been as far as like watching Rochdale at Brighton, like I said, Gillingham. A lot of the Midlands ones, Walsall, been there. Birmingham, went to there. Yeah, been all over watching Rochdale, but I think because like tend to go out wrestling shows at weekend, me away ground travelling's like gone down over the years.
Well, the wrestling's completely collapsed, so you can go back to the football now.
Yeah.
We'll see you at the match. Like.
Listen. Someone needs to figure out what's the undergraps are with Andy Ogden at some point. Otherwise, goodness me, we'll never know what's going on in the randomest places of wrestling.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried to, obviously, when you've been at a wrestling show or you're at somewhere for a wrestling show, have you ever tried to also go to a football game at the same time if there's plenty of time between it, or?
So that question just reminded me of we were at In a Circle and Jay was literally watching Benfica on his phone, like in overhouse, and so like the show's going on, and he's just stood next to me looking down at his phone because Benfica's playing.
I think the only time we did try and go when we were over in Hamburg for WXW, we tried to fit in St. Pauli game, but they'd moved it to the Sunday when we were flying back, so that was a bit of a bad thing. But we did like visit the ground at like the outside of it, see what it was like, because we were visiting like the red light district area there for a few drinks in the afternoon. So.
Oh, goodness.
When in Rome. But as in terms of like trying to fit in a Rochdale game, most famous moment I did was like went to watch the first Wrestle Queendom, and on the same day Rochdale were playing Charlton to stay. They had to win to stay up, and I remember watching the game in the Dundee Arms. I asked like the bar people, "Can you put the game on?" And Joel Thompson got the winner. And he's like a former like cancer survivor, and I ended up think a couple of minutes before this, I said, "Oh, I'm going to the toilet upstairs." I come back down. Joel Thompson had just put the goal in the net, and not seeing the winning goal, but just
the perils of drinking in sport. That is, it's such a good combination until you need to go to the toilet.
Yeah. There's no right moment, is there? But
I had Keir was telling me he went to go and see Chelsea play. They won 3-0, and he missed all 3 goals because he was in the toilet.
That's always a moment though when you miss it, when you're like the goals come in just as soon as you go to the toilet. You're like, I'm gonna go for a minute, nothing's gonna happen. Then you come back, you suddenly hear everyone celebrating. You have no idea what's going on. In terms of lower league football for you, what is it that you would say if someone was wanting to choose between going to a lower?
Sorry, Chris, like, the only one who saw that goal.
Oh. In terms of lower league football, and someone was trying to maybe say, "Oh, I want to just go to kind of Premier League football and stuff like that," what would you say that lower league football brings that the kind of bigger leagues doesn't have within it in terms of that?
I think it's a lot of it's similar to like the lower level of British wrestling, like going watching that. It's a lot of the gallows humour. It's very more intimate experience, whereas I know going to like a Man City and that, you don't feel that, togetherness. Whereas at like Rochdale, when you score a goal, you're all jumping up and down and you hear all more, especially like standing where I do in the Sandy Lane, you can hear all the moaning at the back and you feel like turning around like, shut up.
The Midland supporters are really good at moaning, but like, is the standard of moaning higher the further you go north?
Oh, yeah. Some right professional moaners at Scotland, I would say that.
Yeah, that's that. It definitely sounds. Again, I think that idea of, like I say, the lower going, because I used to go. I'm now going to a lot of lower league football when I can, and it is that ability to just hear someone chant or shout something really, really insensitively stupid, but just not thinking it through in terms of that. It's one of the things I love about it, and as I say, I think when you go to like a Man City or something like that, it is just a very cold experience because, as I say, you're all up in these nosebleeds and stuff like that.
Yeah.
One of the things, other than obviously Scotland, what would you say is probably the best ground that you've been to, or one of the grounds you would always be happy to go back to again if it was on the calendar?
Ooh, good question. I mean, it was like we went to like Old Trafford, and that was an experience because it was like the first time I'd been to see football there. But everything's very tight, like with the seating. Well, I'm like 6'5", so like that.
I have a word of advice for you. Never sit in the Kop at Anfield. The room in front of the seat is like that. And I'm like 4 inches shorter than you, and it was I could barely walk when I got out of there. It was terrible.
Yeah, the Boundary Park's also like that. Oldham Athletic, very close seating, and it's like the coldest ground in the world.
Yeah,
I think it's actually known as Ice Station Zero. Ice Station Zebra, sorry.
Is Oldham, is that like the main rivalry now because of Bury going out of existence?
Well, Oldham still think we're rivals, but we're not. It's like a fake rivalry what they made up. I would say it'll be the rivalry in League Two, but when Bury were around, that was a real rivalry, definitely.
I remember you being less than sad when Bury ceased to exist.
Yeah, I was dancing on their grave very happily. It was one of them things with Bury, like maybe a year or two before it. I sort of predicted it. Like you see them spending beyond the means, and only one way it's going to end. It's all going to end up in tears, and eventually it did. It did with them, and I was happy. I wasn't happy that they went because it's a rivalry, but more happy like, oh, I told you so.
Yeah, like an I told you so situation. And have you ever at a point always had any worry about Rochdale or something like that happening to Rochdale? Has that ever been close or?
I think not to the extent of Bury. I think more recently, like when you sort of hear of money troubles, I think that's worrying. But it's just fingers crossed that they can at least find some investment to get out of it.
The Matheson 1 million must have helped a little bit go towards, depending on keeping the club a little bit afloat.
Yeah, they've got that money, and there's still money coming in from from Craig Dawson. It's like they're always good at getting clauses into the contracts. I think there's been him. Scott Hogan were one when he got sold to Aston Villa for like 10, 12 million. Rochdale got
how much did he sell him for?
I think he left to someone else, and then he got sold to Villa for 12 million.
Brentford. He went to Brentford.
That's what
Villa. Yeah, so yeah, because when Dundee United we had Andy Robertson, and Andy Robertson went to Hull, and we put a clause in, and then when he went to Liverpool for like 10 million or 9 million, we got a bit off of that as well. And it's like just really good to have those clauses in, because those players will go and challenge themselves at clubs, and then obviously if they do well, then you're going to get a piece of it. And in terms of, obviously we've talked a little about Rochdale. In terms of other football during your time as growing up and stuff like that, was there much football being watched, or what was your kind of focus in terms of that?
Yeah, so generally, we've had like Sky since the start of it, when Sky Sports began with Liverpool and Nottingham Forest on that weekend. So I remember all that, and obviously I think JP mentioned it last week, like the Liverpool Arsenal title decider. That was like an early like TV memory, but no, it's generally been Premier League. I do tend to dip in and out of watching like German football and Spanish football when it was on Sky Sports. I'm not really bothered with it since it moved. I think it's on like Premier Sports.
It's on Premier Sports. They have like their own thing, then you can't. It's all online, so that you can't like watch it on like a TV based app or anything for some reason. I don't really understand.
Yeah, I know there's a big like title race at the moment, but I'm just not. I'm not interested enough to just to find a dodgy stream to watch it.
And did you ever find yourself turning on channel 4 or 5 and seeing a bald man, not bald, kind of having somewhat of hair, with a newspaper and a gelato, about Serie A football?
Yeah, because Football Italia and all that. Yeah, no, I always remember watching that growing up.
Yeah, and did you have any players that you saw from there and thought, oh my goodness, he is unbelievable?
I think probably like Batistuta around that time. He was one of the standout players I always enjoyed. And obviously like Gaza and that, but no, I don't think I was a big. I think mine's more been like the Premier League stuff than more international football.
Definitely, for sure. I mean, in terms of, and I'm gonna ask this. I said I wouldn't ask this, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I think it's relevant. The Super League kind of stuff, when you watched and saw that, what was your... I mean, obviously, you're not a fan of one of these major clubs, obviously, unless Rochdale suddenly get invited to it. What was kind of your... Again, were you one of those people who's just like, it's just greed for greed's sake, and it's just absolutely ridiculous?
Yeah, well, it's always been the story, hasn't it? The big clubs looking after themselves. Especially, talk of. There's always been talk of like money dripping down to the lower leagues. Yeah. I mean, especially during this COVID period.
I kind of hope that when they said they were going to punish the big six for breaking away or attempting to break away, I was hoping that the punishment would come in the form of fines that would then be redistributed among the lower division sides. I felt that was a sensible thing to do. To punish the rich people for doing something stupid and to give that money back to the community as a whole. That would have made sense to me, but like they haven't done that.
Yeah, a lot of the I would say a lot of the actual funds during COVID and that, which was supposed to go to League One and League Two clubs, like an emergency package sort of thing. I think they said only 6 of the 20 odd clubs in League One got that money, and it were generally all the top ones like your Sunderland and Ipswiches of the world who got that money. Rochdale didn't. I don't think Rochdale saw a penny of it. So it's just always been the top teams looking after themselves, and that European Super League would have been, like I say, death of football, wouldn't it?
And then that's the thing, like that's baffling to me that Sunderland needed that package when they've just been taken over by one of like another rich kid kind of taking over, pretty much a football guy who probably plays Football Manager taking over that club with a ton of money to spend. So I'm just baffled how that's not been dribbled, as I say, passed on through everyone, because as I say, you've seen what's happened with Bury when money kind of troubles get to the point of, you get an expulsion and stuff like that. So I just don't see how only 6 clubs have kind of gotten that. Obviously,
they're always really quick to punish lower division teams when they break the rules. It's like you get immediate points deduction. If you Sheffield Wednesday, it's cost you your position in the Championship. Bury got absolutely hammered with the points deduction. Bolton got hammered, and yet when the big lads do something wrong, nothing at all.
Yeah. It's double standards in it. End of the day, I think Wigan as well. They got a points deduction, but luckily they've only just survived this season, which is an achievement for them.
Yeah,
you probably could have done with them getting another 3 more points deducted because you just stood up, stayed up.
Yeah.
And I mean that's the thing as well. Like, you see how hard these clubs kind of fall when they do fall. Like, if a club isn't maintenance, like you saw Sunderland, and then obviously in that Netflix documentary, they get relegated. They've kind of basically been like the insect that's consistently tried to the cockroach that's consistently survived in the Premier League for so long. They finally get relegated, and then instead of pushing right back up to the Championship, they go back down. They just go back into League One, and they're just stuck in that league. That league must be quite a difficult league for even a massive club like them to kind of.
They literally just scored when you were talking there.
Oh yeah, Sunderland. There we go.
Sunderland literally scored when you were talking. We must be good luck.
We must be good luck if we talk about teams. Although Schalke, we were not any good luck for. There you go, Lucas.
Oh, maybe not Schalke.
No, they just get relegated because it's what they deserve. Right. That might cause Lucas to suddenly message me some very unruly things in German. Right. So yeah. Right. So I'm gonna ask now. I'm gonna ask the 4 questions. I asked JP this. You've seen it, so I imagine you know what the questions are. They don't have to be Rochdale answers. If you want to answer Rochdale, that's no problem at all. Let's start off with favorite player.
Favorite player. I'll probably go from a Rochdale side of things. So no, I had a couple, like Gary Jones were one. 3: Gary Jones, Grant Holt, and Patrick McCourt, the mercurial Patrick McCourt.
Okay.
Some stories about him. He used to live up not so far away from me at Littleborough, which is like a couple of miles up the road. But he was a talent. He was one of them players who, as soon as he got the ball, like the crowd would be on the feet, like expecting something big. But his main issue was fitness and also liking a pint or two. Because
it's kind of appropriate that the shirt I've put him up wearing has got Carling as a sponsor.
Oh, there he is. There he is. Paddy. There we go. I was wondering. I was like Patrick McCourt, and then I kind of had a suspicion that it was, as he was called up here, the Derry Pelly.
He was, like I say, he could wander past players, just like beat one, beat another. Like after a game on the weekend, though, there's a feature in the local newspaper called On the Town. And it'd have pictures of people in like the Lytton Tree or Yates's, and Paddy had been every week on the town, pint glass in hand. Yeah, he was never a 90 minutes player. He was always 60 minutes and knackered. One of his best goals though was away on like a Tuesday night away at Halifax Town. It's somewhere on YouTube, but it's like a great 1-2 between him and Kevin Townsend, who was up front with him. And Paddy finishes it off, and crowd go mental. But the reason why he left Rochdale, because we got Paul Simpson was in as manager. He was there as a player, but he became manager the season after. And because he sort of played in that position, similar position to Paddy. Paddy never got back in the team. Paul Simpson was just all for himself. 3-0. 3-0 now.
There we go. See, with
go on,
good
lads.
luck, it's going to be consistent. So Paddy McCourt, let's talk about the other two quickly. Grant, the wrestler Holt, on you go, fire away.
Yes, Grant Hall, he's just like a big bulldozer of a centre forward. The thing is, with a lot of our centre forwards who were only there for like a season or two before they left, he ended up, I think he scored 15 or 20 goals in a season. Just, great striker, great man. He ended up leaving for Nottingham Forest for about £300,000, which is quite a low fee for him.
You should have got more for him.
Yeah, so he went to Notts Forest, played under Colin Calderwood, and I think Calderwood played him as a attacking midfielder more than a striker, and he sort of ended up falling out with him. But when he did make his return for Rochdale, when I think we were quite low down in the table, like relegation area. And when we seen Grant Holt re-signing for Rochdale, it's like the second coming again, even though his legs had gone. But when you'd put him up front for like the last 10, 15 minutes, just a presence, absolute presence of a man.
Yeah,
legend.
so I remember seeing him. I remember seeing him when he played up here because he played for Hibs for like a season, and I think it was in I'm not sure if it was in the Championship. Yeah, it was in the Championship at that point. So the second division. And I just remember thinking, like, what is he doing here? And it was clear that obviously he was nowhere near where he was before. But yeah, and I think he scored a couple there. And who was the third one?
Yeah, so it was Captain Fantastic Gary Jones, who
Gary Jones.
Yeah, okay. Club legend. Like the first time when he's like one of them, I don't know, you get him like Roy Keane types. He just grab everyone by the bootlaces and carry the team forward. Like the first time when he left was, I think he was he'd been captain for years, and he left at the same time as Steve Parkin going to Barnsley. So that was a big move at the time, like him going. And we didn't recover for a couple of seasons. And then when he returned, he was like proper goal scoring centre midfielder. I think one season he maybe got about 15 goals, but he was dependable, and he's that sort of player we'd missed in the centre of the park, someone who just like bark orders and get everyone organised. He did have a bit of a reputation for passing the ball sideways. I think he got the nickname a few times of the Crab.
And do you remember the goalie that I'm just reading up on him now? And do you remember the long range strike he scored at St Mary's against Southampton?
Yeah, I wasn't there live for the game, but I remember it was one of them weekends where it was like an international football weekend, and we was the main game on not on Match of the Day, but on like the Football League show. So I think there's like an 8-minute highlight video on YouTube with all them goals. That was at the time when we had Chris O'Grady were up front, who was another excellent striker. We've had our fair share of excellent strikers like O'Grady, Lambert, Lafondra, Ian Henderson, who's another one who should be in like the greatest category we had. I think he's the second highest goal scorer for Rochdale, and he probably would have gone on to be the all time, but he left like contract disputes at end of season. He went to Salford City and he's still banging goals in for them.
Yeah. See, Salford is an interesting kind of topic from what we may and that might not. I mean, if we move on to then, so there he is, the Adam Lafondra, there he is, who's now plying his trade in Arn's favourite league, the A-League, and then I think he moved on to the Indian Premier League or something like that, didn't he, or something?
Yeah, he was playing for Sydney, and then he went to Mumbai FC. He scored quite a few goals over there. I think he's gone back over to, I think it's Sydney or Melbourne, one of the two teams.
Yeah, Sydney FC he plays for, bangs him in for Sydney.
Yeah, he's an excellent player.
So let's look at favorite. So if we're going favorite tournament, so this obviously is kind of growing up watching kind of obviously World Cups and Euros and stuff like that. Do you or even a tournament, even kind of a year of one of the leagues that you were in? What would be your favorite tournament?
Favorite tournament? I'll go for like World Cup and Euros. Like 90, I always remember that, but I'm maybe too young to take it all in. 94, I remember being a terrible tournament to watch. USA 94. It's bad when people only remember it for Maradona on the drugs and Diana Ross with that penalty. But no, I do feel like France 98, that felt like the first big tournament to me. I think I remember watching, might have been England Tunisia in a music class at school. Because England were on at 2:00 in the afternoon, instead of doing like music class or science classes, they had it on telly. I remember watching that game during high school. It stood out as a big early memory for me. France 98. It's still funny, isn't it?
It's just so bad that they just carry on, and that goalie is just. Oh, honestly, it's one of those moments that you'll never.
He was trying to save it. He was after that one. He had it covered.
I think World Cup. I'm glad World Cup 90 because when we did our first one, I said World Cup 90, and I think it is just one of those like tournaments that's just feel good. It has all the kind of stars at the time in their prime in essence. And it was a good feel for a kind of a tournament. So definitely, right. This is the bit where Arn will have to do some work in search up. What is your favorite shirt? Is it the one you're wearing right now, or is there one in the past you've went, oh my god, that's beautiful?
I've not really been a big like shirt collector. I did have an old like Rochdale one sponsored by Carcraft, which was a white shirt, but it had like black lining here and like a luminous green around the cuffs. That was a nice shirt. There was also one which was a hand-me-down from RGF, which was an old Man City shirt with a brother as a logo.
Okay.
I've got the old Carcraft. That's the home shirt, I guess.
That's the home shirt. So the one I had, I think, was like the away shirt.
That looks quite interesting. I like the look of it. It's not bad.
But a lot of the like recent shirts I've enjoyed, like the black and blue stripe ones. But I was saying to Arn earlier, like this one's like a double XL, and it still feels like a bit tighter. I did have an extra large one last year, and I'm not fit. It's still in the wardrobe. I just look at it like maybe one day.
I had to cut down on the pre-match points to get into that one.
Well, yeah.
Oh, listen, I'm pretty sure this is double XL and it fits okay. But then there's like the Chester United one I've got, and it's an extra large, and it's tight. I wore it last week purely because I didn't go anywhere and show anything off. But goodness me, it's not being worn in public. So probably would you say that one, the away one, of the Rochdale one? Would you say?
Yeah. I would say that.
Okay. Now this one, I was going to ask you midway through, and then I remembered it was part of the 4 questions. Favorite manager. Now this again doesn't have to be Rochdale related, but I imagine you're probably going to go Rochdale related, which is fine. But who has been kind of your favorite manager? Who's someone that you think they just talk so well, or the way they have the boys playing football is just phenomenal?
Yeah. Favorite manager has to be Keith Hill.
Boom!
There he is.
Yeah.
There he is. Country gentleman, Keith Hill.
What is it about Keith? What is it about Keith that kind of stands out for you from his time?
Well, it's when he took over, and they did say it was like no fear football. It just like attack, similar to like Kevin Keegan. Will try and score more than you, and as well as like his after match interviews, some of the like one-liners he'd come out with. Like, I think it was one game where we didn't score any goals, and he said, like a porn analogy, saying there was a lot going on, but nothing, a lot of foreplay, but nothing going on in the box. That was one of his lines that he come out with. It's also like his dress sense as well, like the flat cap and the padded jackets. And I think there were one moment, like one of the promotion seasons, where he'd like wore some like red pants. And I think it was the Newport County game, which was like one of the last games of the season, that a lot of the supporters went to the Newport away game, all clad in like pink and red pants, like in honour of Keith Hill. But I think getting to, because he did return for a second spell after John Coleman got sacked, and it was like a Christmas, and just brought that lease of life. But getting to the end of his reign, it felt a bit like Arsene Wenger, like he'd spent too much time there.
He spent a lot of time, because I just got your list of managers up here. So you've got he was there from like December 2006 until summer 2011.
Yeah,
which is that's a decent enough stretch. But then he came back again in 2013 and did another 6 years.
Yeah. Well, getting to the end of his reign, his post-match interviews, he'd always be blaming the supporters for having a go at him. And I always felt going to Scotland during the end of his reign, it was like going to the gallows every week. You knew you were going to get beat 4 and 5-0. It was,
Did you get upset because he went to Barnsley? Because like him and Steve Parkin both went to Barnsley.
They did,
and then came back.
Yeah, no, I did feel a bit like upset that he did go, because the managers after Keith Hill were terrible. Steve Eyre, oh my, under 18s coach from Manchester City, who had this big reputation, like he'd worked with all like Manchester City youth levels, and it promised that he's going to carry on the standard of what Keith Hill was playing. He was shocking as a manager.
6 in 27 for the wins.
I remember one of them wins was Preston away. My first ever visit to Preston, and I remember it was winning that game 1-0. And then after the match, he was giving it the big one in front of the Rochdale fans, like he'd won the FA Cup. He was shocking. One of his signings, I'm trying to think now, Ahmed Benali, who was one he got from Man City. I think he ended up going playing in Italy, in Serie A, somewhere. But no, he was terrible as a manager.
Yeah. He's currently playing so he went Rochdale, then Brescia, then Palermo, then Pescara, and now he's playing for Crotone. He had a 1-year spell in the English under-17s, and now he nationally plays for Libya.
Yeah. I think also under Steve there we had Dennis Bergkamp's like cousin, Roland Bergkamp, who they got from Brighton. He wasn't good. Another bad striker.
See, when you
this is the kind of thing where, like, beforehand I was thinking Andy could probably make a few players up and like they'd slide through, because I'd be like, well, it's probably true, but there is actually a Roland Bergkamp.
See,
did not know about.
Yeah, played for Brighton Hove Albion, then went on loan to Rochdale. Goodness me.
5 games on loan at Rochdale.
Yeah, there was him, Steve Eyre, and then John Coleman, who does great at Accrington. It's the only club he has done great at. But the relationship with him turns sour. He signed a lot of his old Accrington drinking buddies. Ian Craney were one who was always injured, mugging a wage. He ended near the end of his reign. I always remember John Coleman offering supporters to come to his office, and he'd explain what his his idea of thinking was behind the team. And I think it was 2 or 3 weeks later, he got the sack just at the same time as when Keith Hill was coming available from Barnsley.
So he got you relegated then, John Coleman?
Yeah, he did.
I'm kind of curious. I'm looking at the names, and there's a Uruguayan guy named Danny Bergara who was your manager.
Danny Bergara,
yeah, from 1988 to 1989. I take he didn't have much of a spell with you guys, because he was obviously only there for about a year. But
He was he more generally Stockport County, Danny Bergara.
Right,
But I think when he was in charge, it was more before before I started watching. When I started watching, it was Dave Sutton, who was another character, but he got Rochdale quite high up in the table. But and then we had Mick Doherty, who he ended up falling out with the chairman at the time. I don't think he lasted long. We'd always finish anywhere between 15th and 18th in League Two. We weren't good to watch. And then after that, it was famed Graham Barrow. His style of football was called barrow ball. It was just long boot up the field. I think that was at the same time.
Like watching Barcelona.
Yeah, it was like at the time when we had who up front, Andy Morris, who once played for like Chesterfield. He was a donkey, absolute donkey. That was the first time maybe with Barrow where I'd seen like people bringing flags saying Barrow out and people chanting, get rid of him. Yeah, he wasn't good.
No. And I'm going to add just quickly one more now, because I didn't do this with JP, but I'm going to do it with you anyway. Who is the worst footballer you've ever seen play live?
Oh, we had two. We had two of them at the same time. Marike Sacco, who was a 6'7" striker, played for Torquay. I remember him scoring a hat trick against Darlington, which just came out of the blue. But yeah, he had two left feet, and the other one was around the same time, Keith Barker, who was on loan from. I think we got him from Blackburn Rovers, and.
So that's Chris Linney's fault then, yeah?
Yeah. And he ended up, I think it was during a game on Sky Sports, we lost to Hartlepool on penalties. And he missed a penalty, Keith Barker. But he was that good as a footballer that he ended up playing cricket for Warwickshire.
There he is.
Because I looked at him and I was like, he's a cricketer. To be fair, like back in the day, you used to have seasonal footballers. Like in the summer when there was no football going on, they'd go and play cricket. So he's just continuing that the heritage there.
Yeah. No, he was bad. He was bad as a footballer. Him.
Yeah, one of those ones where it's like one of those ones where you definitely know there's another sport out there for them in terms of that.
Yeah.
And just to kind of get your final thoughts in terms of overall your football experience, and just how you feel football is as now. Do you feel what do you see for yourself in kind of the future of football? I take it you're still obviously going to go and see Rochdale whenever you can. Do you feel there's going to be an upturn hopefully at some point with this next season being quite interesting now that you've got kind of
I think it all depends who we sell, really, because there's been a lot of talk of Stephen Humphries, who we'd signed this season, been linked with Stoke for money. Quadwo Bar, who's one of the youngsters, he was due to sign for Man City in January, but some health issue come up, so he didn't sign for him. But looks like he's going to Watford, through a tribunal that way, so we get a bit of money. There's another of the youngsters, Ethan Briley, who's been training with Manchester City, but it's very hard to. He's hardly played for the Rochdale first team, so getting into even the development squad for City is going to be hard.
It feels like that's happening increasingly. It's like they get scouts out there, the big boys get the scouts out, and they want to pick the players up before they actually develop a name for themselves, so they can get them cheaper. Yeah. And then they get them into their academy, and then they'd probably end up washing most of them out or just sending them out on loan. That seems to be the way it's going at the moment. They're just collecting players.
Yeah, I think it's like Chelsea, isn't it? They're the main ones.
Chelsea, Man City have got a lot of players.
Yeah.
You end up seeing that it's a stockpiling effect. You end up seeing them there's players from Dundee United's lower youth squad who end up getting signed for there's a boy Kieran Freeman, he went to Sheffield United. Or no, Southampton, sorry. He went to Southampton. And then he's back at us now after a good year or two down there. and they just don't ever make it. There's a boy who went to sign for Crystal Palace, and he's most likely, I think the first thing they did was they sent him on loan. And now you don't know whether they're going to make it out or not, because again, they don't have that time to build. Don't get me wrong, you do get some bit of money, but it's not, a huge amount because they've not had enough time to build. Like a Luke Matheson, who at least had a good couple of spells to build his name, and then you get £1 million for it in terms of that, so it's not as bad.
Yeah, we had another lad, Daniel Adshed, who ended up going to Norwich for about 300,000, and he's not even touched, the Norwich first team. I think they did send him out on loan to one of their feeder clubs in Holland, of all places. But it's always been the case with Rochdale. Is like try and make these young players and then sell them on for money, because they don't stop around long at Rochdale. But I would say hopefully for next season, I'd look to us to be up there, depending who we keep in the squad. I think playoffs would be a realistic target. I know a lot of the supporters will want instant, like going back up to League One. But no, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. But in general, with football itself, I do find myself like a bit on a downturn, especially with like the Premier League and watching it on Sky. There's matches which I'm just not interested.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of them, isn't there?
They made like a big mistake when they did that thing where they tried to, you had to buy certain matches in the Premier League when they did it midway through. And it was like you were getting charged $14.95 to watch, like, I think it's like West Brom versus Brighton or something like that, and you just think,
thanks.
But the thing is, all them games BBC you've ended up with, aren't they? All the ones no one. It's always Wolves games.
And in terms of like the Champions League and stuff like that, and your thoughts on the kind of European kind of side of it, obviously I know you maybe don't have much of a thought of it, but what is your kind of thought process on the future for it in terms of that stuff?
Well, the Champions League in general, my interest has gone away. Even though I do have BT Sport, it's gone away since it left ITV. I think many like neutrals would probably feel like that. That new format, what they're doing, you need a degree to work out what's happening, don't you?
I tried explaining this to Eddie a couple of weeks ago, and he just stared blankly at the screen for while I was talking, and then said he'd have to go and look at it because he didn't understand what I was saying.
We're 2 weeks from that conversation, and I still have no idea how it works. I'll need to read it.
It's very simple. I'm not going to do it again.
I was going to say, I think I was going to imagine the only reason why Andy might have BT Sports is because of a performance centre in some part of Essex in London.
It's Enfield, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I used to get it free with my broadband, but I ended up paying like £6 a month extra. But now I've got a good deal with Sky, so good lad, Sky.
He knew who to message, but that's not the point of the conversation. But yeah, so I mean, I think I do think that is a thing. The Champions League, when you had the one game free on ITV, it did have that kind of, you knew where to go for it, so it was good that it was there. Now it's like, because it's behind the wall, and then they have that one match free or wherever they do. I don't know if they still do that. It's just, as I say, the format. I don't even know what this new format's going to bring. It's just so bad.
More games, more television revenue.
Yeah,
that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's cash.
I think that's been the problem. That's been the problem in this like COVID era. Is too much. It does feel like there's too much football. Like,
I know why they're doing it though, because like there's precious little else for people to do. So like I understand it. It stops some people from going nuts. So in a way, it's been good for some people. But like if you were following football and you were like watching all the games, there must have come a point, and I know I passed it a while ago, where you just went, yeah, there's 6 games on today. It's a Sunday, but I'm not going to watch any of them. There might be a game that I'll catch later. Like I'll watch like one game on a Sunday, and that's fine.
Yeah, there were that point, weren't there, when German football started up, weren't it? And we're like,
yeah,
German football.
On, Bet365. I was watching it getting the little player screen up, and yeah.
I remember they did the BT did that game with Dortmund, and it was like one of the first. I think it was Dortmund versus Bayern. I can't remember. It would have been something. I just remember it was like, because that was the only game that was on, and it was the only live football. I'm pretty sure they must have had like their highest ratings. But then you remember, and then I remember people tweeting about it going, "This is so bad without any fans whatsoever."
Yeah.
It took a while for him to kind of get the idea of pumping in some crowd noise, and I liked that for a while because it's like, you can almost not tell the difference. But then eventually, I just got sick of it and just went back to the stadium noise, because you can hear the managers shouting stuff at the players, and I find that more interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Right, so
I kind of want to ask before you go. I kind of want to ask about the Dale Bar. So I've got it up on Google Maps. I'm like, where is it?
Yeah, so it's around the corner from there. It's not that bit. So it's the Radcliffe Arms. It's originally called, but yeah, it's just your general 5 lagers of doom going on in there.
I like that there's arrows just kind of pointing into this corner, and I'm like, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's like the back of the stadium.
I now have another question, because since obviously Andy is kind of the BritRes pub expert, and we have him on. What is the best kind of pub that you have been to? Either an away for an away game. What would you say is the best pub that you've been to before a game?
Well, not counting Rochdale, obviously. But
I'm getting all the sites of Rochdale here. Here's a pile of dirt around the back of the ground.
So someone's turning on this podcast right now and going, "Okay, what are they looking at?"
I would say one of my favourite pubs was one near Chesterfield's old ground, Saltergate. There was a good real ale place around the corner from there, which was a nice. But Port Vale's not bad, isn't it? Like their own social club at the stadium's pretty decent. There's also like a Titanic Brewery pub around the corner, which was good to go to. With Rochdale, say the general places are the Cemetery, which is around the corner. That's like a proper Rochdale supporters pub, and also in the centre there's the Flying Horse and the Baum, which are two excellent real ale establishments
and
for you away supporters.
Yeah, and was the Ship and Mitre, was that the one that would probably be near the Tranmere one, or was that more near?
That's right at Liverpool Centre. And any of the pubs near Tranmere, nah, you need a stab vest going in them places.
Oh, goodness me.
Kevlar on you.
Yeah.
Andy Ogden and Jeff Ogden and Kevlar just walking into any kind of pub would be an interesting sight. In terms, so I mean, obviously football was your main sport. Was there, just quickly, again, I'll ask one more and then that is us, we will wrap up. Was there any other sports that you kind of enjoyed watching when you grew up, or anything else that you...
Yeah, horse racing. That's horse racing's the main one.
I forgot we're speaking to Patient Zero from the Cheltenham Festival of 2020.
Yeah, I've been into horse racing since about 4 or 5 year old. First bet I had was Desert Orchid in the 1990 King George when it won. That was my first ever bet, and I've been following it ever since. Go to Cheltenham every year and Aintree when obviously COVID out of the way. Yeah. York as well, York races, that's always a good place to go. It's always something I've been into. That obviously wrestling, but that's not a sport. Darts is another thing. Go and follow. Always go to I think we've near enough been to every major event, like the World Championships and World Match Play at Blackpool's always a a fun event to go to. Great venue, the Winter Gardens. Also, they're also the one that when it was held at Bolton's ground, the UK Open. First time I saw Michael Van Gerwen versus Phil Taylor, which was just like outstanding to watch. But into a lot of stuff apart from football and the Graps.
Oh, listen, if we were to talk about the Graps, we'll do that. We'll do a little bit of Graps talk after the show, because there's stuff I've got to ask. But yeah, that I say, do you have anything you want to plug or anything you want to build up before we get going?
Yeah, so I do a little podcast called Graps and Claps Audio. You may have heard it, which before COVID was basically a load of us in a pub, half cut, reviewing the actual live wrestling show what we've been to, and probably insulting many wrestlers along the way. But since then, it's just been reviewing old retro shows. Yes, there is an episode there called Brum versus Brian Harvey, where we talk about Brian Harvey's incident with a car. But yeah, no, we had plenty of retro shows going on with many special guests, of which Eddie, you've been on before on one of our 5-hour journeys through wrestling.
I've been on a live one.
You've been on a live
one in Sheffield,
yeah, at the Triple Point Brewery during a breed show, weren't it?
Yeah, it was in a intermission, wasn't it? Between two shows? Yeah,
yes, it was. That would have been the show where me and quite a few others went running around the venue.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that. And where can we find you on Twitter if we want to see your tweets? And also, since he's in the room, he can plug his own stuff. Just he can't swear. Where can we find both? Go
on now, Jeff.
Social media. Yeah. Come on, Jeff.
What, you want me to swear?
No.
All right. No. Okay. Yeah, just follow us both on Graps and Claps at Graps and Claps on Twitter. Our resident custodian, Chris Lene, is looking after that for us and trying to get us out there. And both of us at Jeff Ogden 2 and Oggy Part 3.
Cheers, Jeff.
Cheers, Jeff.
Social media director Jeff Ogden there.
I say, if you're watching this, please like and subscribe. We're back tomorrow. Yes.
Yes. Tomorrow's Monday, Eddie. We're doing a podcast tomorrow.
I know. I just completely. Sometimes you tell me you're off, and then sometimes you
no,
say maybe you're working. You're here.
I'm here. We are.
9 o'clock.
We all go.
9 o'clock. We are all go. Thank you very much, Andy. It's been a pleasure to learn about Rochdale. It genuinely has been just a pleasure to see your face and speak to you again, not in a 5-hour experience about Hulk Hogan stuff. And we will see you tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.